Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, Part 1. The summer afternoon felt as if the world had grown sleepy. Even the clouds drifted as though they were dreaming, and the tall grass swayed in lazy agreement. Alice lounged with her head propped in her hands, a book open on her lap, but entirely uninteresting. The sun warmed her hair, and the gentle hum of bees lulled her into a soft, wandering boredom. Her sister's voice droned faintly nearby as she read something filled with long paragraphs and no pictures at all. Alice felt that was almost rude. A book with nothing amusing to look at or even a conversation to follow. She sighed, tracing the empty margins with her finger. Why would anyone write a book without pictures? Where's the fun in that? The heat made her eyelids heavier by the minute, drifting between waking and dream, until a flash of white darted across the corner of her vision. A rabbit, not unusual, but this one wore a waistcoat and a pocket watch, and it spoke. Oh dear, I shall be too late. Alice blinked rapidly, jolting upright. Did that rabbit just talk? The rabbit scurried forward, fumbling with his watch, tapping the glass anxiously before running again. Alice gasped in surprise, then delight, then curiosity that pushed away every last bit of sleepiness. "Wait!" she called. "Sir, please, Mr. Rabbit!" But he was already bounding through the grass. She leapt to her feet, the book tumbling beside her as she raced after him. Her heart thumped with a mix of confusion and wonder. She had never seen a creature so dressed or so worried, and the more she thought about it, the more she needed to know where he was going. The rabbit darted toward a large hedge, slipped through a gap, and disappeared behind a thick veil of leaves. Alice hurried through after him. He vanished down a hole at the base of a tree. Alice hesitated. The entrance was dark, too narrow, completely impossible. Surely he didn't really fit down that. But she leaned forward, hands on the ground, peering in, and her hand slipped. The world dropped out from under her. She plummeted downward. She didn't scream. The fall was too slow, too strange. It felt as though she were floating downward through a long vertical tunnel lined with shelves, maps, jars of marmalade, old portraits, scattered books stacked haphazardly, as if someone had been storing forgotten pieces of an entire household inside this impossible shaft. Alice drifted past a jar labeled orange marmalade, and she reached for it instinctively. It was empty. She placed it gently on a passing shelf, surprised she had time to do so. "How very curious," she murmured aloud. "What a deep well this must be." Her voice echoed upward until it was swallowed by the darkness. She kept falling, minute after minute. Her mind wandered with the lazy drift of her descent. Would I fall straight through to the other side of the world? Do people walk upside down in Australia? And do they read their books backwards? She giggled softly as she imagined such absurdities. Far below, a faint glow appeared. The drifting slowed, easing her downward until her feet touched the ground as lightly as if she had stepped off a single stair. She stood in a long hallway lined with doors of every shape and size. Some were tall and ornate, others were tiny, round, or painted in gleaming colors. But when she tried them one by one, every door was locked. She tapped her foot, frustrated. How strange! There must be a way out. At the far end of the hall, she spotted a curtain. Behind it was a small door barely the height of her knee. She knelt, tried the knob, and found it unlocked, but she couldn't possibly fit through. Through the tiny doorway, she glimpsed a radiant garden with brightly colored flowers and fountains sparkling like glass. It was the most beautiful place she had ever seen. "Oh, how lovely!" she whispered. "If only I were small enough." As she stood, her eyes caught a glass table in the center of the hall she swore hadn't been there before. On it waited a small bottle labeled, "Drink me." Alice lifted it, examining the clear liquid inside. Perhaps it's foolish to drink something just because it instructs me to, but surely they wouldn't put a poison label on something poisonous. She sniffed it. It smelled delicious, like cherries and warm custard and pleasant things she couldn't name. "Well, if one is to explore Wonderland," she said, not realizing she had already named the place, "one must sometimes be brave." She took a sip, then another. The world stretched upward as her body shrank downward. Her dress sagged, settling into place until she was no larger than a doll. She gasped, "My goodness, this is perfect!" She hurried toward the tiny door, but realized with horror that she had left the key atop the table. The key now towering above her like the spire of a cathedral. Alice groaned. "Oh, no. Oh, why didn't I think of the key first?" She wandered back across the hall, each step an exaggerated journey, when she saw a small cake on the floor with icing that spelled, "Eat me." "Well, why not?" she muttered. "It worked before. Perhaps it will again." She took a bite. The hall shrank. Or rather, she grew. Her head struck the ceiling. Her arms stretched along the walls. She could barely move. "Oh, no, no, no. This is quite wrong. Stop. Please stop." But she grew until her tears burst forth in enormous drops that splattered onto the floor, forming puddles that spread like shallow ponds beneath her feet. Her sniffles trembled through the hallway. "I just wanted to go through the door." She spotted the tiny bottle lying on the ground far below, half filled. She bent awkwardly, barely managing to grab it between two enormous fingers. "Here goes." Again. She drank, and she shrank. Down, 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 until she was small once more, standing ankle-deep in the tears she had cried while she was enormous. The salty pool sloshed around her as it grew into a great lake. Other creatures were swept in, a dodo, a duck, a lory, and more animals she couldn't name. They paddled toward a sandy shore that appeared as the lake carried them along. Alice followed. They gathered on the bank as the sun rose higher, glistening on wet feathers and soggy fur. Everyone shivered, cold and confused. The dodo cleared his throat with great importance. "The best way to get dry is a caucus race." "What's a caucus race?" Alice asked. The dodo blinked at her. "Why, everyone knows we run in circles, and when we decide, we all stop." "And who wins?" "Why, everyone wins." The animals cheered, delighted by this logic. They began running in haphazard circles on the sand. Alice, unsure but eager to join, followed along, running without direction until she was nearly dizzy. After several minutes, the dodo lifted a wing. "The race is over." "Who won?" Alice asked politely. "Why, you did," said the dodo, "and so did everyone else. Therefore, prizes. The animals crowded around her. Alice bit her lip. I don't have any prizes with me? The dodo frowned thoughtfully. You have a thimble. She checked her pocket, a small thimble she had forgotten about. How curious that it was still with her at all these sizes. The dodo took it from her ceremoniously, then handed it back. We congratulate you, he said with pomp, for winning your own prize. Alice tried not to laugh. As the animals dispersed, a small mouse approached, twitching nervously. You're not afraid of cats, are you? Alice asked without thinking. The mouse's fur bristled in immediate outrage. Afraid? Afraid? My family has fought cats for generations. Alice realized her blunder too late. The mouse launched into an indignant story that spiraled into a tale of fangs and battles, speaking with such dramatic intensity that Alice had to follow carefully to avoid missing the point. But as soon as she mentioned her own cat, Dinah, the mouse shrieked and dove into the water, paddling desperately away until it vanished. Alice groaned softly. I didn't mean to frighten him. The other animals also scattered at the mention of Dinah. She wandered the now quiet shore, brushing sand from her dress, feeling a bit abandoned. Perhaps I should not bring up cats here. As she walked, she saw the white rabbit once again hurrying toward her, more distressed than before. Oh, my whiskers and ears! Where have they gone? Mary Ann, Mary Ann! He exclaimed, mistaking Alice for his maid. Fetch my gloves at once. Before she could explain, he rushed off toward a small cottage in the distance, gesturing frantically for her to follow. Alice sighed. Well, he seems very upset. I suppose I should help. The rabbit's house was small and tidy, with red roof tiles and windows shaped like half-moons. Inside, she found a pair of gloves and a fan atop a table, but as she picked them up, curiosity tugged her toward another bottle nearby, unlabeled but familiar. She hesitated. No, not again, but perhaps just a sip. She drank. She grew. Her shoulders hit the ceiling, her arms pressed against the walls, her legs curled awkwardly beneath her. She could barely breathe. She dropped the bottle, horrified. Not again. Outside, the rabbit screeched. Mary Ann, my house! She's ruining my house! He and several creatures gathered outside, pelting pebbles that turned into cakes as they landed. Alice knew exactly what to do. She bit into one and, thankfully, began shrinking again until she crawled out the door, brushing past the angry rabbit and disappearing into the forest before he could shout after her. The woods stretched endlessly, filled with mushrooms taller than trees and flowers that seemed to hum with hidden laughter. Alice walked carefully. This place is very peculiar. Everything comes undone and rewrites itself the moment I think I understand it. A low rumble echoed from above. On a broad mushroom sat a blue caterpillar, smoking from a long hookah, exhaling elegant spirals that drifted lazily into the air. He stared at her with cool indifference. "Who are you?" he asked. Alice hesitated. I hardly know, sir. I changed so many times today that I'm quite unsure myself." The caterpillar blinked. "Explain yourself." "I can't explain myself, I'm afraid," Alice said, "because I'm not myself, you see." "I do not see," he said flatly. Alice bit her lip, frustrated. The caterpillar drew from his hookah again, considering her silently. Finally, he pointed with the stem. One side will make you taller, the other will make you shorter. She looked down at the massive mushroom. But which side is which? He shrugged. You'll figure it out. And he slid away, disappearing into the woods without another word. Alice sighed heavily. Nothing here has the decency to be simple. Still, she broke off 2 pieces, one from the left, one from the right. A cautious nibble from one made her shrink so rapidly her surroundings expanded in dizzying proportion. A nibble from the other caused her limbs to stretch, her neck growing long above the trees until birds scolded her for trespassing in their nests. She adjusted, carefully biting alternating sides until she was her proper height once more, though she kept the pieces in her pockets just in case. As she continued through the forest, she heard laughter, light, mischievous, echoing through the air without a visible source. A grin appeared first, bright, wide, floating in mid-air. Then the rest of a striped body materialized, lounging in a tree branch above her, the Cheshire Cat. He blinked lazily. Where are you headed? Alice looked from one path to another. They branched wildly, twisting into directions that made no sense. I don't know, she admitted. I don't much care where... Then, purred the cat, it doesn't matter which way you go. Alice frowned. I only want to find my way. Oh, you'll find it, the cat grinned, if you keep walking long enough. His tail waved. One of them leads to the Hatter, another leads to the March Hare. Both are mad. Alice shivered. I don't want to be among mad people. Oh, but you must be, said the cat. We're all mad here. I'm mad. You're mad. How do you know I'm mad? You must be, he said, disappearing until only the grin remained. Or else you wouldn't have come here. And then the grin winked out too. Alice stared at the space he had occupied. This world makes less sense with every step. Yet I want to see more. She took the path ahead, through twisting trees, past whispering flowers, toward the rising sound of clinking china, and a voice laughing at jokes no one else could hear. She arrived at a long table set with teapots, cups, and saucers all crowded together, as though for a party that never ended. At one end sat the March Hare, twitching nervously. Beside him was the Hatter, wearing a massive top hat. A sleepy dormouse slumped between them, its head dipping in and out of slumber. Have some tea, the Hare said abruptly. Alice looked at the cluttered table. But there's no tea. Then you shouldn't have asked for it, the Hatter replied matter-of-factly. Alice blinked. I didn't ask. Riddles, the Hatter cried. Why is a raven like a writing desk? Alice perked up. I don't know. Why? The Hatter shrugged. I haven't the faintest idea. The Hare burst into laughter. Alice rubbed her temples. I will get no sense from them at all. The conversation spiraled into riddles with no answers, time that refused to move properly, and stories that contradicted themselves mid-sentence. Alice tried to follow, but found her patience wearing thin. At last she stood. This is ridiculous. I shall go on my way. They barely noticed her leave, continuing their endless tea party with oblivious cheer. Alice walked again into the forest, hoping for some corner of this strange world that made even a little sense. And the trees parted to reveal a glorious garden, vibrant roses, marble fountains, hedges trimmed into fantastical shapes, and guards shaped like playing cards, living cards, painting white roses red. Alice approached, stunned. "What are you doing?" she asked one of them. The card looked guilty. "We planted white roses by mistake," he whispered. "If the Queen finds out, it's off with our heads." Alice swallowed hard. "The Queen? Off with their heads? Oh, dear." Before she could ask anything further, a trumpet sounded. The cards scrambled into formation. The ground trembled with approaching footsteps. The Queen of Hearts appeared, a figure of overwhelming presence, sharp red gown, stubborn chin, eyes filled with fiery temper. "Who is this?" the Queen demanded, pointing at Alice. Alice took a breath. I'm Alice, your Majesty." The Queen narrowed her eyes. "Off with her head." Alice froze. "What?" "Consider, my dear," the King murmured beside the Queen. "She hasn't done anything yet." The Queen huffed. "Very well, let her play croquet." In seconds, Alice found herself handed a flamingo for a mallet and positioned before hedgehogs curled into balls as croquet balls. The players, living card guards, ran about bending themselves to form hoops. It was chaos. The Queen shouted at everyone. The flamingos refused to cooperate. The hedgehogs rolled away deliberately. Alice sighed. "I've never seen such a curious game." The Cheshire Cat appeared, perching atop the King's crown. "Hello again," he said cheerfully. The King flailed. "Get off! Shoo! Someone remove this cat!" But since the cat faded and reappeared in different spots, the guards ended up chasing nothing but air. The Queen grew more furious. "Off with his—" But the cat vanished before she could finish. Alice realized something important. In Wonderland, rules seem to exist only long enough to be broken. But before she could dwell on this thought, the Queen grabbed her arm. "You will join us at the trial," the Queen declared. "Trial? What for?" "For the knave, of course. He has stolen my tarts." Alice blinked. "Did he?" "Of course he did," the Queen shouted. "Unless he didn't, but we shall find out." The court was a massive open area filled with card soldiers, animals, and various Wonderland creatures buzzing with excitement. A judge's table stood at the front, and on it sat the King wearing enormous spectacles. Alice was pushed to a seat among the spectators. She folded her hands tightly. Trials? Tarts? How did I get caught up in this? The White Rabbit stepped forward, holding a trumpet. "The trial will now begin," he proclaimed. The knave stood trembling. The first witness was the Mad Hatter. His testimony was incomprehensible and mostly about tea. The Queen shouted, "Off with his head," twice during the questioning. The next witness was the Duchess. She rambled about morals and pepper and entirely irrelevant matters. The Queen threatened her too. Then Alice, the rabbit read aloud, "is called to the stand." She swallowed. The King peered down at her. "What do you know of the matter?" "Nothing," she admitted. "I haven't even seen the tarts." The court gasped. "That is very important," the King said. "It's not important at all," Alice objected. Her voice trembled, but she raised her chin. She felt strange, heavier, Her body was growing again, inch by inch. The king flipped through a stack of papers. Rule 42. All persons more than a mile high must leave the court. I'm not a mile high, Alice protested, though she was certainly taller than she had been a moment ago. You are, the king insisted. Alice stood straighter. Nonsense! And even if I were, the rule is ridiculous. The queen slammed her fists on the table. Off with her head! Alice drew in a breath and felt something shift inside her. She wasn't afraid anymore. She had grown, both in size and in courage. "Who cares for you?" she said, her voice booming. "You're nothing but a pack of cards." The court gasped. The cards rose into the air, fluttering forward like a storm of paper, rushing toward her, swarming, dash, dash, whirling, dash, dash, until everything went white. And she awoke on the river bank. Her sister's hand gently shook her shoulder. "Alice, Alice, you fell asleep." Alice blinked, disoriented. The sunlight still glowed softly, the grass warm beneath her arms. She sat up slowly, memories swirling like a dream dissolving into daylight. "I had the most curious dream," she whispered. Her sister smiled knowingly. "Tell me about it." Alice looked down at her empty hands, half expecting to find a piece of mushroom or a bottle marked, "Drink me." But there was nothing. Still, some part of her knew the wonder had been real in its own impossible way, and she smiled.